I closed over $2 million in new business last quarter. Biggest deal in the company's pipeline. And I did it without a travel budget, working weekends, missing weddings. So when I took one vacation day to explore an opportunity, I thought I'd earned it. Instead, I got fired. Lawrence said it was about loyalty. Said I wasn't committed. 4 years of record-breaking performance, erased in 5 minutes. But what he didn't realize was, I wasn't just walking out. I was walking away with everything he tried to steal. Lawrence didn't even look up when I walked in, just waved a hand toward the chair across from him like we were about to discuss quarterly goals or next month's travel schedule. But I knew the moment I got the meeting invite. No subject line, no context, just a 9:30 a.m. timestamp. I'd seen that kind of silence before. It was always followed by the words, "This is nothing personal." He finally looked up, laced his fingers, and leaned back like he was doing me a favor. "This shows you're not committed to our team," he said. His voice was calm, rehearsed, like he'd practiced it in the mirror that morning. I didn't respond right away, just let the words hang there. 4 years of loyalty, of deals closed and weekends missed, all boiled down to a single sentence. "My name's Jared Monroe," I wanted to say. "I brought in more revenue last quarter than your entire leadership team combined." But I didn't say that. I just nodded. "I understand." His eyebrows twitched. He wasn't expecting that. He was expecting excuses. Maybe anger. Definitely some begging. But not this. "You're terminated effective immediately. I need you to clean out your desk. April will escort you to HR." I stood up slowly and reached across his desk. He hesitated before taking my hand. His grip was soft, limp. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said. The walk back to my desk felt like a funeral procession. People didn't look directly at me, but I could feel them watching. The open office silence was louder than any conversation. I grabbed a cardboard box from the supply closet and started packing. I didn't have much. A mug from my sister, a cactus I'd somehow kept alive under fluorescent lighting, a few pens. That was it. 4 years, and it all fit in a box I could carry with one hand. April stood nearby, arms crossed, keys jingling like I was some flight risk. I'd brought in $2 million in business last quarter, and now she was watching me like I might pocket a stapler on the way out. I almost laughed. Tyler emerged from his glass-walled office just as I passed by. He avoided my eyes. "Be sure to turn in your badge at security," he mumbled, then ducked back inside. The same guy who told me 3 separate times that my raise was on Lawrence's desk. The same guy who took credit for the Westbrook deal and said it was a team win. I stepped into the elevator and caught my reflection in the polished steel doors. I didn't look fired. I didn't look angry. I looked like someone who had just been handed the last piece of a puzzle. I didn't even know I'd been building it. But it was clear now. This wasn't punishment. It was release. I just hadn't realized yet how far that freedom would take me. The elevator doors slid shut, and for the first time all morning, no one was watching me. No eyes tracking me from behind monitors. No fake sympathy. Just silence. A hum of motion. I exhaled slowly and leaned back against the wall, cardboard box in my arms, cactus shifting in the corner. I thought I'd be angry. I thought I'd want to scream, break something, storm back into Lawrence's office and tell him what a coward he was. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad either. What I felt was something stranger, something almost unfamiliar. Lighter. Like I'd been carrying a weight for years, and someone had finally lifted it without asking. I looked down at the box in my hands. This was it. Everything I had to show for 4 years of work. No plaque, no bonus check, no thank you card. Just a few personal items and a whisper behind my back as I left the building. 4 years of loyalty exchanged for silence. It hit me then. This place had never seen me. Not really. They saw numbers on a spreadsheet, client names in a CRM, wins that somehow became team efforts as soon as they got close to the boardroom. But me? Jared Monroe? I was invisible, replaceable, an efficient cog in a machine that never planned to promote me. Just squeeze every drop out until there was nothing left. And I let them. I had stayed when I knew better, when Tyler started taking credit, when my inbox mysteriously missed key meetings, when "we'll revisit your compensation" became an annual tradition. I made excuses for them, gave them the benefit of the doubt, told myself I just needed to work harder, be more visible, more vocal, more whatever. But it was never about that. They had decided who I was before I ever opened my mouth, and now they'd decided I was gone. The elevator stopped at the lobby. I stepped out and handed my badge to the security guard. He didn't say anything, just nodded and tossed it into a drawer like he'd done it 100 times before. I walked through the revolving doors and into the Raleigh morning air. It was cold, but the sun was out. Bright, clear, real. I stood there for a second, blinking like I'd stepped out of a cave. My car was parked across the street, the same 10-year-old Honda I'd been driving since college. I smiled when I saw it, because I wasn't broken. I wasn't even bruised. The illusion had shattered, and in its place was something solid, something true. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the unknown. I was free. I didn't take the freeway home, just drove slow through side streets, windows cracked, letting the cold air keep me awake. The box sat in the passenger seat belted in like it mattered. I glanced at it every few blocks. That cactus, that mug, a pen I stole from a hotel in Atlanta after closing the Baldwin account. 4 years of my life reduced to office trinkets in a folding cardboard box. That's what stayed with me. When I started at Driefield, I was 25, fresh out of state. Business degree, mid-tier GPA, nothing special on paper. But I could talk. Not pitch, not sell. Really talk. The kind of talking where people forget they're being sold to. My dad used to say, "A good salesman sells products. A great salesman solves problems." He knew. 30 years in pharma sales taught me more at the dinner table than any professor ever could. When I landed the job at Driefield, he said I was lucky. Solid company, real future. Stick it out and grow with it. So I did. First year I was everywhere. Office before sunrise. Last one to leave. I learned the product line inside out. Industrial automation, robotics, logistics systems. Traveled to plants all over the Southeast. I didn't just read the brochures. I walked the floors, asked questions, watched how things worked. Clients remembered me because I remembered them. I knew their kids' names, their vendors, their stress points. It paid off fast. Rookie of the year. Then top performer the year after. But things started to shift. Not overnight. More like erosion. A meeting I should have been in that never showed up on my calendar. A proposal I worked on that somehow had Tyler's name on it when it got approved. He has more management experience, they said, when he got the promotion I was gunning for. Then he got a company car. I got silence. Still, I kept showing up, kept hitting numbers. Closed the Westbrook deal after 6 months of building trust. Flew to 3 different cities to lock it in. When it was signed, Tyler announced it like it was his personal triumph. "Team win," he said in the meeting. I bit my tongue. I told myself it was just politics, that if I kept producing, eventually it would all even out. But that's not how it works. Not in places like Driefield. The scoreboard doesn't matter if you're not invited to the game. Still, I kept showing up. Because somewhere inside, I believed merit would win. That hard work still counted. I didn't realize I was being tolerated, not cultivated. So when they fired me, I wasn't shocked. Not really. The signs had been there for years. I just hadn't wanted to see them. The Honda pulled into my apartment complex. I turned off the engine and sat in the stillness. That little box next to me, packed with years of effort, said everything they wouldn't. I had given them my best, and they gave me a cardboard box. The Abbott deal didn't fall into my lap. It took 3 months just to get them on the phone, 6 more to get them to trust me. I flew to Chicago 3 times on my own dime because the travel budget was tight. I sent handwritten thank you notes, took late-night calls, walked them through specs and pricing options until their procurement team finally said yes. $2 million, The biggest contract Driefield had signed all year, and I made it happen without a single dollar of company support. When the contract was finalized, I didn't expect fireworks, but I expected something. The next morning, I saw photos on Instagram. Lawrence at a downtown bar with Tyler and the rest of the team. To a record-setting quarter, the caption read, clinking glasses, smiles. Not a single word to me. That bar was 2 blocks from my apartment. I stared at my screen for a long time. Then I closed the app and opened my calendar. Nothing. No email, no mention, no thanks. When I finally got the nerve to ask Lawrence for a meeting, my 3rd attempt at a raise, he barely looked up from his laptop. "Timing's not ideal," he said. "We're reviewing compensation structures. Big picture stuff. Give it some time." Big picture. Right. $2 million in new business, and I couldn't even get a bump in base pay. Tyler got a company car and a corner office for closing a deal I brought him into. I got silence. I walked out of that meeting not angry, just done. That night, I opened my laptop and updated my resume for the first time in 4 years. I didn't tell anyone. Not my coworkers. Not even my family. It wasn't about jumping ship. It was about knowing I had options. That if Driefield didn't see me, someone else might. A week later, I got a LinkedIn message from Vanessa Mills. She used to be a client when she worked at a logistics firm. Now she was at Rowland Publishing. "We should catch up," she wrote. "I may have something you'd be perfect for." We met for coffee the next day. It felt casual, just 2 professionals reconnecting. But halfway through, she mentioned they were launching a new business development division. Needed someone who understood technical sales, someone who could build something from the ground up. Someone like me. The interview was set for the following Tuesday. I used one of the vacation days I'd banked and walked into that building like I belonged there. The lobby was bright, clean, calm. A different energy. Hopeful. I didn't know someone from Driefield saw me walk in. I didn't know that one moment, me, in a suit, on my day off, would be twisted into betrayal. But I remember how it felt to sit in that interview room. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to prove my worth. I felt like someone already knew. Vanessa always had a good eye for timing. Even when she was a client, she asked the right questions at the exact right moment. So when her message popped up on LinkedIn, just days after Lawrence shut down my raise request, it didn't feel random. It felt like the universe tapping me on the shoulder. "We should catch up," she wrote. Casual. No pitch, no pressure. I almost didn't respond. I was still trying to convince myself I could fix things at Driefield if I just stuck it out a little longer. But I typed back, "Sure, coffee?" We met that Thursday afternoon at a quiet place near the Rowland office. She looked the same, sharp, focused, always a few steps ahead in her mind. We talked for a while about her transition to publishing, how different the industry felt, what she missed about supply chain, and what she didn't. Then her tone shifted. "We're building something," she said. "New division, business development, B2B partnerships for industrial publishing platforms. I need someone who gets systems and sales, someone clients trust." I just looked at her. "I think that someone might be you," she added. I didn't answer right away. It felt surreal. A week ago, I was still telling myself I just needed to be patient. Now here I was, offered the chance to lead something. Actually lead, not wait around for approval while someone else took credit. "Are you interviewing a lot of people?" I asked. "Not really," she said. "I've got names, but I wanted to talk to you first." That night, I stared at my bedroom ceiling for hours, weighing everything. 4 years at Driefield, built from scratch. Clients I cared about. A network I'd worked hard to earn. But what did any of that matter if I kept getting passed over? If the people at the top only saw me as a line item? I took one vacation day. One. I filled out the PTO request through the official system, got it approved. No questions asked. On Tuesday morning, I shaved, wore my best suit, and walked into the Rowland building with a folder under my arm and a quiet hope in my chest. I didn't expect anything. I just wanted to see what life looked like outside the glass walls of Driefield. The interview went better than I could have imagined. They asked real questions, listened. Vanessa had done her homework. They already knew my numbers, my clients, even the sectors I specialized in. "You understand how to build trust," one exec said. "That's harder to teach than product specs." I walked out of that building feeling seen. But what I didn't see, what I couldn't have known, was the junior analyst from Driefield in the corner of the lobby, waiting on her cousin for lunch. She recognized me, knew where I worked, took a photo, sent a message. By the time I returned to the office the next day, Lawrence already had it, and everything I thought I'd built at Driefield was about to come crashing down. The call came just before 9 a.m. "Lawrence wants to see you in his office, now." That was all April said. No good morning, no context, just a summons. I didn't need context. I walked in and found him already seated, flipping through something on his desk, probably the photo. He didn't waste time. "This shows a lack of commitment," he said, same tired line. "You took a meeting with a competitor on company time." "It was a vacation day," I replied, calm. "We don't split hairs here, Jared." He was leaning back in his chair like a judge passing sentence, not the guy who'd used my numbers to justify his bonus last quarter. I nodded. "I understand. You're terminated effective immediately." I didn't fight. Didn't ask why the rules were different for me than for everyone else. Didn't remind him that I brought in over $2 million in revenue last quarter, that I covered my own travel because the company couldn't justify expenses, that I skipped my cousin's wedding to finalize the Abbott contract. I just stood up, shook his hand, and said, "Thank you for the opportunity." April was already waiting with a box. I packed in silence. The cactus, the pens, the mug with the chipped handle, my entire professional identity, scooped into a box in under 5 minutes. As I headed for the elevator, Tyler stepped out of his office. No eye contact. "Be sure to turn in your badge at security," he said, like he was reading off a teleprompter. The same man who once told me, "You're the future of this company." The same man who told me my raise was coming, just waiting on Lawrence's approval. He disappeared before I could reply. At the security desk, I handed over my badge. The guard gave a nod, tossed it into a drawer with a dozen others, like this happened all the time. Maybe it did. I walked outside, sun catching the top of the Driefield building like it didn't know what had just happened inside. The wind was sharp but not uncomfortable. I got into my car, placed the box in the passenger seat, and just sat there. For almost an hour, I didn't move. No phone calls, no texts, just silence and engine hum. I kept waiting for the panic to hit, the fear, the regret. It never came. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a quiet stillness, a strange relief, like I'd been released from something without knowing I'd ever been trapped. That night, I went home, dropped the box on the kitchen counter, cracked open a beer, and sat on the couch. No laptop, no email, no calls, just me, watching the light shift across the wall. For the first time in years, I didn't feel behind. I felt like I was finally catching up to myself. I showed up at Rollin the next morning in the same suit I'd worn to the interview. Not out of desperation, out of clarity. I didn't want to waste time pretending I needed to process things. I already had. The moment Lawrence slid that termination notice across the desk, he gave me permission to stop apologizing for wanting more. Vanessa greeted me in the lobby herself. She didn't offer fake sympathy, didn't ask how I was holding up. She just smiled and said, "Come on upstairs. The team's ready to meet you." Upstairs, they had a corner conference room waiting. 5 people, 1 empty chair. I recognized 2 from LinkedIn, senior people, decision makers. We didn't dance around. No HR fluff. They already knew my numbers, had spoken to 3 of my former clients, including Abbott. This wasn't an interview. It was onboarding in disguise. They asked how I'd build the division, who I'd target, how I'd balance client retention with outreach. And when I spoke, no one interrupted. No one glanced at their phone. They listened like what I said mattered. 45 minutes later, Vanessa slid an offer letter across the table. Regional Director of Business Development. Starting salary, double what I made at Driefield. Commission on top. A private office, a team of 3, and most importantly, autonomy. I didn't hesitate. "When can you start?" she asked. "Immediately." We shook hands. Her grip was firm, real. The kind that said, "We build things here, not just talk about them." I walked out of that room with more than a job. I walked out with proof that I hadn't imagined it, that my value wasn't tied to how long I kept quiet, or how many times I let someone else take the credit. That Friday, I signed the paperwork. Monday morning, I started. Rowland didn't make a show of it. No welcome banners, no team lunch, just a badge, a key to my office, and a credit card with my name on it. They treated me like someone who belonged, and after years of waiting for permission, that was more than enough. My office had a window, natural light, a view of the city. My name was already on the door. I sat at the desk and exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. No one was watching to see if I'd sink. They expected me to build. That first week I dove in, learned their CRM, met with operations, marketing, the exec team. I didn't have to chase anyone for access or information. Everyone treated me like a partner, not a subordinate, not a seat filler, a builder. By the end of week 2, I'd already drafted a strategy, identified key sectors, begun outreach to clients I knew would be a fit. It wasn't about revenge. It was about momentum. And for the first time since I walked out of Driefield with a cardboard box, I could feel it again. Forward motion. It was a Thursday morning when the letter showed up. Legal envelope. My name typed neatly on the front. No return address. At first I thought it was a client document, maybe a vendor agreement or a contract from procurement. But as soon as I slid it open and saw the words cease and desist, my stomach dropped. They were accusing me of violating a non-compete. Driefield. I read the letter twice just to be sure I wasn't misunderstanding. According to their lawyers, I was in breach of a binding agreement that prohibited me from working for any competing company within a 100-mile radius for 1 year. They were demanding immediate termination from my role at Rowland, or else they'd pursue legal action. It felt surreal. Because I'd never signed a non-compete, I would have remembered. That kind of document sticks with you. But I didn't panic. Not yet. I walked straight into Rowland's legal department and handed the letter to our in-house counsel. She read it calmly, then looked up at me. "Did you ever sign anything like this?" "Never," I said. "I'd swear to it." "Good," she replied. "Send us everything you've got from your time there. Offer letter, employment agreement, reviews. We'll handle it." I went home that night and pulled out the file box I kept in my closet. Receipts, tax forms, HR docs. I found my original offer letter from Driefield, a scanned copy of the onboarding packet, my most recent performance review. Nothing about a non-compete, nothing even close. I scanned it all and sent it in. The next day, Driefield responded, with a signed non-compete agreement attached, dated 3 years ago, right after I won Rookie of the Year. It had my name, my signature. It looked legit, except I'd never seen it before. I stared at the PDF like it might explain itself, like maybe I'd forgotten, but I hadn't. I remembered that review meeting vividly. Lawrence handed me a folder and said, "Just a few standard updates, sign at the flags." I'd trusted him. I signed where the sticky notes told me to. I never saw a non-compete in that stack, but now here it was, with my name on it. Rowland's attorney wasn't rattled. "This happens more than you'd think," she said. "What matters is intent, timing, and proof. We'll challenge its validity. But be prepared. They're playing dirty." That night, I lay awake replaying every conversation I'd had with Lawrence over the years, every deal I'd closed, every time I let it slide when Tyler got the credit, all of it leading to this, an accusation designed to erase me from the industry before I even had a chance to start over. They weren't just trying to protect their turf. They were trying to erase mine. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just fighting for a job. I was fighting for the right to keep building the future they refused to give me. The next few days blurred into paperwork, scanned files, and conference calls. Rowland's legal team was thorough, methodical. They pulled apart every page I'd ever signed at Driefield, cross-referencing timestamps, IP addresses, signature formats. I sat in meetings I barely understood, hearing words like retroactive insertion, forensic validation, and contractual ambiguity. It all felt bigger than me. But it was about me, about whether my signature on that non-compete was real or manufactured, and whether my future was going to be decided in a courtroom instead of a boardroom. I remembered the moment it probably happened. 3 years ago, after my Rookie of the Year award, Lawrence had called me into his office. I was still naive enough to think it was a promotion. Instead, it was a brief meeting with a folder already waiting on the edge of his desk. He smiled, said it was just standard paperwork updates, and told me to sign where the colored flags were. No read-through, no copies, just sign here, here, and here. I didn't question it. I wanted to prove I was a team player, and in that moment, I trusted him. Now I sat in my new office, staring at the fake non-compete with my name printed at the bottom. Rowland's legal counsel, a woman named Dana, called it clean but suspicious. She said the formatting was off, margins inconsistent with other company forms from that year. Page numbering didn't match, and my digital signature was suddenly missing from their HR database. Could be forgery, she said, but proving intent is the hard part. It's your word against theirs unless we find leverage. That word again. Leverage. Not truth. Not fairness. Just leverage. I walked home that night slower than usual, jacket open despite the cold. The streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement, and I kept thinking about how easy it had been for them to do this. How one quiet act of deception could follow me across companies, across years. A single signature, real or faked, had the power to detonate everything I'd worked for. They weren't trying to protect proprietary information. They weren't worried about trade secrets. This wasn't about ethics. It was about control. They didn't want me working for Rowland because it meant I'd escaped, that I'd proven I was valuable beyond their walls. And if one person could do that, maybe others would follow. I stopped halfway up the stairs to my apartment and sat down, phone in hand, scrolling back through old emails, looking for anything. A timestamp, a phrase, a receipt of truth. If they were willing to fake one document, what else had they covered? That night, I didn't sleep much, but I made a list. Every odd meeting, every moment that felt off, every bonus that didn't quite add up. If this was going to be a fight, I wasn't showing up unarmed. I was done playing defense. It was time to dig. The call came just after 6 p.m., long after I'd shut my laptop for the day. Unknown number. Normally I wouldn't have answered, but something made me swipe. Jared? A quiet voice on the line, hesitant, nervous. This is him. It's Jessica, from accounting, at Driefield. I hadn't spoken to her in months. Always polite, always tucked away behind spreadsheets and budgets. She wasn't someone who called people after hours. I'm not supposed to be calling you, she said quickly, but you were always decent to me, and I need you to know what's happening. My pulse slowed, my instincts sharpened. I stepped out onto the balcony, closed the sliding door behind me. Cold air hit my face. I'm listening. They're saying you took client files when you left, she said. They're building a case, saying you stole proprietary data to help Rowland. I leaned on the railing, grip tightening. I didn't take anything. You know that. I know, she said. That's why I'm calling. She paused, and I heard her take a breath like she was about to jump off a cliff. The day after you were let go, I saw Lawrence in the server room. He had access through IT. He was in there for hours. I thought it was strange, but figured he was just pulling reports. Then I found out your entire client folder had been deleted from the system. My mouth went dry. Deleted? Gone. Purged. Like it never existed. And when someone asked where it went, he told them you must have taken it, that maybe you downloaded it before you left. It was so simple, so elegant. I no longer had access to prove what was mine, because it had been wiped. And now they could fill in the blanks however they wanted. "I wish I could tell your lawyer," she said, "but I can't be involved. I have a mortgage, kids, and Lawrence, he has people. He knows things about everyone." I didn't blame her. I couldn't. This wasn't her mess to fix. "I understand," I said. She exhaled, relieved. "I just thought you should know what you're up against." She hung up before I could say thank you. I stood there, phone in hand, staring out at the skyline. It didn't feel like betrayal anymore. It felt like war. They hadn't just fired me. They were actively trying to ruin me, to erase my name, stain my reputation, cut me off from the one thing that gave me value, my work. This wasn't about a contract dispute. It was personal. They wanted to bury me, to make sure no one ever hired me again, that the story would always be Jared Monroe, the guy who got caught stealing. But now I had something they didn't count on, a whisper of truth, and a reason to go deeper. The message came late. Just a text, no greeting, no details. "We should talk, not about the legal stuff. It's important." It was from Tyler. I stared at it for a minute, half expecting it to disappear. Then I typed back one word. "Where?" We met at a coffee shop on the edge of downtown, neutral ground, far from Driefield. He was already there when I arrived, hunched over a table, hoodie instead of his usual pressed shirt, eyes sunken. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "I can't be tied to this conversation," he said before I sat down. "If word gets out, I talk to you." "I get it," I said. "Start talking." He rubbed his hands together, looked around like someone might be watching, then leaned in. "The non-compete? It's not just you. Lawrence has been doing this for years. Has people sign standard HR paperwork during performance reviews, then adds pages later. Real signatures, fake documents. It's routine." I said nothing. But that's not even the worst of it. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling. "You ever wonder why your commissions never matched your projections? Why your bonuses always came in light?" I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Of course I'd wondered. "They've been skimming," he said. "Every major deal. Lawrence has 2 sets of commission spreadsheets, one with the real payouts and one that gets sent to payroll. The difference gets funneled into a discretionary account called the Executive Performance Fund." I leaned back in my chair. "You're serious?" Tyler nodded. "I saw it by accident. I was looking for a client file on his laptop while he was in a meeting. Spreadsheet was open. 2 versions of everything. And you didn't say anything?" He swallowed hard. I confronted him. He told me it was standard, that the senior team always did it that way. Then he offered me a cut. "And you took it?" He didn't deny it. "I've got a mortgage, kids." I told myself it was just how business works. I stared at him. This was the same guy who told me to hang tight, that my raise was coming, that I was next in line. And now here he was asking me for what? Mercy? Forgiveness? "Why tell me now?" He looked down at his coffee. "Because they're not just trying to stop you. They're setting you up. Lawrence told the board you inflated the Abbott contract numbers, that you doctored the deal to pad your commission. That's why they're saying you stole client files, to hide the fraud." I felt the floor shift beneath me. That's a lie. I know. But they've started fabricating documents, backdated emails, edited contracts. They're building a paper trail. I stared at him. "Why should I believe you?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone again. "Because I kept receipts." He showed me screenshots, commission spreadsheets, email exchanges, transfer logs, everything he'd said, documented, proving that I wasn't crazy, that they'd been playing a rigged game all along. "Send them to me," I said. If I do, I'm finished. You already are, I said. The only question is whether you go down with them or help take them down. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he started forwarding the emails. The files came through just after midnight. Dozens of emails, spreadsheets, screenshots of internal memos, bank logs, and commission reports. Each one more damning than the last. Tyler hadn't been exaggerating. The fraud was real. And bigger than I'd imagined. 2 versions of every deal. One showing the full commission owed. One showing what actually got paid. The difference, sometimes tens of thousands per contract, rerouted to an account labeled Executive Performance Fund. No explanation. No authorization. Just theft disguised as overhead. There were email threads between Lawrence and the CFO, joking, even casual. Adjust Jared's commission line, one read. We'll make up the difference at year-end. Another. Push the Westbrook bonus into next quarter's cycle. Tell him we're recalibrating. The language was clinical, efficient, like they were moving numbers, not lives. I sat in my apartment staring at the screen, jaw clenched. 4 years of grinding it out while they skimmed from the top. 4 years of being told to be patient, to wait for the right time, to trust the process. The process was theft. Driefield wasn't just broken, it was corrupt from the inside out. I forwarded everything to Rowland's legal team. Dana called me within the hour. This changes everything, she said. This isn't just about your non-compete. It's systematic fraud, wage theft, possibly tax evasion. But we've got one problem. Tyler, I said. She sighed. He won't testify. And without a witness, this is still just circumstantial. Screenshots alone are hearsay unless someone's willing to authenticate them. Of course he wouldn't testify. He was in it too, complicit and scared. Then we find someone who will, I said. Do you know anyone else who might have knowledge of this? I thought of Jessica, the hushed voice on the phone, the fear in her tone. She knew, but she wasn't safe. She couldn't come forward. Not yet. But maybe someone else could. I spent the next 2 hours making a list, not of allies, but of ghosts. Former employees who had left suddenly. Reps who quit after banner years with no explanation. People who, like me, had been pushed out without cause. I combed through old LinkedIn connections, names in archived emails, photos from holiday parties that felt like they happened in another life. One name stood out. Kevin Blackwell, top performer in the Eastern region. Older rep, quiet, professional, respected. He'd resigned abruptly last year, supposedly due to personal issues. Rumors flew, burnout, alcohol, family trouble, but I never bought it. Kevin had been rock solid, a lifer. I found his profile, still in Raleigh, working for a small automation reseller, a step down, way down. I sent a message. Need to talk about Lawrence Bennett and commissions at Driefield. It's important. He responded 5 minutes later. I've been waiting for this call. My heart beat faster as I stared at the screen. Tyler had given me the receipts. But Kevin? Kevin might have the keys to burn it all down. Kevin looked different. Thinner, slower. His suit was off the rack instead of tailored, and his eyes had that tired, hunted look I recognized from my own reflection a few weeks earlier. But when he shook my hand, it was steady. Like a man who'd been carrying something heavy and was finally ready to put it down. We met at a diner off Capitol Boulevard. Nothing fancy. Vinyl booths, black coffee, the smell of bacon in the air. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. They fired me because I found the spreadsheets, he said, flat. No bitterness, just fact. Same ones Tyler showed you. But I went further. I leaned in. How far? Kevin slid a thumb drive across the table like it was a loaded weapon. Expense account fraud, vendor kickbacks, inflated project costs with the difference pocketed by the executive team. Lawrence, the CFO, even procurement was in on it. I stared at the drive. You have proof? Bank records, email chains, Invoices from shell companies, all of it. He took a slow sip of coffee. I was going to take it to the board, built the whole case. Then Lawrence got wind of it. Next thing I knew, there were whispers about me drinking on the job, clients claiming I missed meetings. One in particular said I showed up intoxicated. Did you? I never even had that meeting. He smiled grimly. 2 weeks later, I resigned under pressure. NDA on the way out. Severance if I stayed quiet. I took neither. Why didn't you go public? He looked down at the table, voice quieter now. They didn't threaten me. Not directly, but there was a conversation, casual, about my wife's nursing job, about how Memorial Hospital's funding could be influenced, about how my kid's school might reconsider certain students if negative press reached the board. I felt sick. They have connections, he said. Old money, old favors. And you just lived with it? I waited, he said. Watched. Monitored public filings, vendor shifts, payment flows. I kept the evidence off-site, encrypted. I knew eventually someone else would see what I saw. Someone they couldn't lean on the same way. Someone like me, I said. Kevin nodded. I've got nothing left they can take, he continued. You still have your name, your job. But if you're serious, if you're really going to fight them, this is your shot. We spent the next 3 hours going through files. They were devastating. Wire transfers from known vendors to personal accounts. Internal memos approving inflated project scopes that ballooned margins for no reason. Emails instructing finance to adjust reporting on commissions. This wasn't mismanagement. It was a system. A profitable one. I've got everything, Kevin said. You bring the lawyers, I'll bring the fire. I shook his hand before we left. This time it wasn't just steady. It was loaded with quiet resolve. They thought they'd buried the truth. Turns out the truth had been saving itself, for the right moment to rise. I walked into Vanessa's office the next morning with the thumb drive in my hand, and Kevin's words still ringing in my ears. She didn't ask for a summary, just plugged it into her laptop, opened the folder labeled Driefield Internal Fraud, and watched her screen with a kind of focused fury I'd never seen before. When the fourth spreadsheet loaded, she closed the lid and looked up at me. Okay, she said. We take them down. No hesitation, no PR spin, just action. By noon, our legal team was on the phone with the State Attorney General's office. By the end of the day, Dana had looped in contacts at the SEC. It wasn't just about me anymore, not about a non-compete or commission theft. This was organized, sustained corporate fraud. Millions siphoned off through fake contracts, skimming, and ghost vendors. They'd been doing it for years, and now we had the receipts. That night I met Kevin in the parking lot of a closed strip mall just off I-440. He handed me a second drive. This one's got the backups, he said. Off-site server logs, deleted files, everything they thought was gone. You sure you want to do this? Kevin didn't blink. I didn't spend a year being silent so they could ruin someone else. You're the first person who fought back. They won't see you coming. We submitted everything, officially, legally, permanently. Dana filed the complaint, then triggered a protection clause to shield Kevin as a whistleblower. Subpoenas followed within days, first to Driefield's bank, then to their payroll firm, then to their cloud storage provider. Within a week, their accounting team had gone silent on internal emails. By the second week, we got word the CFO had retained private counsel. Then it hit the press. State investigates fraud allegations against Driefield Robotics leadership team. No names, not yet. But the headline was enough to send shockwaves through their investor group. The board scheduled an emergency meeting. 3 days later, the raid happened. Federal agents walked into Driefield's headquarters with warrants in hand. Computers were seized, hard drives cloned, HR servers pulled. They even took the archive room. Boxes of client records, shredded contracts, archived commission reports. Tyler called me that night. They took everything, he said, voice hollow. Computers, servers, files. Lawrence was escorted out in front of everyone, CFO too. I didn't say anything, just let the silence stretch. They're suspending me, he added. Pending investigation. You'll probably face charges, I said. He was quiet for a long moment. Think my cooperation will help? It's the only thing that might. I hung up and stared at my phone for a long time, not in triumph, not even relief, because I knew what came next wasn't vindication. It was cleanup, and truth never travels without a mess. But for the first time since I shook Lawrence's hand across that desk, I knew I wasn't alone. And neither were they. The walls were closing in. 2 days after the raid, I got the call I'd been waiting for. The lawsuit's been dropped, Dana said. No apology from Driefield, no explanation, just a quiet withdrawal of their cease and desist, like it had never existed. She didn't even sound surprised. They've got bigger problems now. Bigger problems was an understatement. By the end of the week, the headlines weren't just local, they were everywhere. Fortune, Forbes, even CNN Business ran versions of the same story. Massive fraud scheme uncovered at Driefield Robotics. Executives under investigation. My name wasn't in the articles, but I didn't care. I knew the truth. So did the clients who started pulling their accounts one by one. The real blow came when the class action lawsuit hit. Dozens of current and former employees, people who had quietly suffered the same commission theft I had, came forward with their own stories. Some had documentation, others just had scars. It didn't matter. The weight of it was too much for the company to contain. Driefield's stock tanked within days. Vendors froze partnerships. Major contracts evaporated. By month's end, Lawrence was gone. The CFO resigned. Tyler's name was quietly removed from the leadership page. The last thing I expected was a letter, delivered by courier, containing a certified check. $147,000. Back pay. Commission. Damages. I didn't cash it right away. I let it sit on my desk for a few days, unopened. Not because I needed the money. I didn't. Rowland had me more than covered. But because that check represented something bigger than a number. It was the tangible proof that I hadn't imagined it. That every slight, every delay, every quiet theft had been real. It was validation. But more importantly, it was closure. I finally deposited the check on a quiet Thursday morning and didn't tell anyone. No social post, no champagne. Just walked into the bank, slid it across the counter, and walked out lighter than I'd felt in years. Justice wasn't loud. It was final. I stayed focused on building. My division at Rowland expanded faster than projected. We added 2 more associates, opened new markets. Our reputation for transparency and performance became our biggest asset. Clients trusted us because we didn't play games. And slowly the story of Driefield faded from the headlines. The noise quieted. The names disappeared. But the industry remembered. Other companies adjusted their commission structures. Quiet audits were launched. The ripple effect of our fight reached places I'd never even set foot in. And somewhere in the wreckage, Lawrence and his team faced the full weight of what they'd built and destroyed. I didn't need to see it, because I had something they'd never get back. My name, my freedom. And the satisfaction of knowing the truth didn't just survive. It won. 1 year to the day. I stood at the front of the room, presenting our quarterly numbers to the sales team. Revenue was up. Client retention was the highest in the company. We'd expanded into 2 new sectors and were actively poaching top talent. Some of them former Driefield reps, the ones who walked away with their dignity intact. Others were still healing. I knew the look in their eyes. I'd worn it myself. We didn't just rebuild something here. We built it the right way. After the meeting, Vanessa pulled me aside. Simple, direct. Board approved your promotion, Vice President, effective next month. I shook her hand, thanked her, not surprised but genuinely grateful. I hadn't clawed my way up this time. I hadn't waited for crumbs to fall. I'd earned this step by step, and it felt clean, solid, mine. That evening, I drove to my parents' house just outside Raleigh. My dad had finally retired. They'd moved closer a few months back, partly for family, partly because he wanted to be nearby for whatever came next. The man couldn't sit still, but at least now he didn't have to wear a tie. We had dinner on the back porch, just the three of us. Simple food, too much laughter, and stories my mother had told 100 times but still made us laugh. As the sun slipped below the tree line, my dad leaned back in his chair and raised his glass. "Proud of you, son," he said. "Not because you won, because you didn't let them make you bitter." I nodded. He was right. It had never been about revenge. It was about truth and peace, about walking through the fire and refusing to come out hardened. "I didn't want to become them," I said. "You didn't," he replied. "You did it right." We sat in the silence that only family can hold without awkwardness. The cicadas hummed. The air was thick and warm. I looked out at the trees, the sky darkening into that deep southern blue, and realized something I hadn't quite admitted to myself yet. I wasn't just successful. I was free. No more scrambling for recognition. No more explaining my worth to people who refused to see it. No more waiting for validation that would never come. I had built something, on my terms. "So," my dad said, breaking the silence with a smirk. "Vice president, huh? Does this mean you're finally going to buy a new car?" I laughed. "Maybe, but I think I'll keep the Honda a little longer." He raised an eyebrow. "Sentimental?" I shrugged. "It reminds me of something important." "What's that?" "That the fastest way up isn't cutting corners. It's building something that lasts." He smiled, lifted his glass again. "I'll drink to that." So did I.